The luxury boutique was buzzing with its usual energy, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over rows of designer handbags, sleek mannequins posed in tailored suits, and a faint scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air. It was the kind of store where the elite shopped, where name recognition often dictated the level of service received. At the entrance, a man stepped inside, unnoticed at first. His hood was pulled up over his head, shadowing his face, and his hands were tucked casually into the pockets of his worn-in leather jacket. He moved with the confidence of someone who didn't need permission to be there, but something about his appearance clashed with the boutique's pristine elegance. Behind the front counter, a new sales consultant, Daniel, narrowed his eyes. He had started working at the store just a week ago and had already been warned about time wasters, people who entered just to browse, never intending to buy. The man in the hooded sweatshirt, with his unshaven jaw and casual stance, didn't fit the usual clientele. Daniel nudged a fellow consultant. "We should keep an eye on him," he muttered. "Probably just killing time." His colleague hesitated. "I don't know, he looks kind of familiar." But Daniel had already made up his mind. Straightening his tie, he walked over to the hooded man, plastering on a polite but firm smile. "Excuse me, sir," he said smoothly. "Can I help you find something?" The man looked up, and beneath the shadow of the hood, his eyes were sharp, piercing, unmistakable. But Daniel didn't recognize him. "Just looking," the man replied in a low, even voice. Daniel's smile tightened. "I'm afraid we cater to a very specific clientele here. If you're just browsing, I'd recommend checking out some other shops down the street." The man's lips curved into the barest hint of amusement. He reached for a watch inside the glass case, a sleek timepiece with a hefty price tag. "What about this one?" Daniel cleared his throat. "That's a limited edition model," he said quickly. "Very exclusive." The man tapped his fingers against the glass thoughtfully. "And what if I want to buy it?" Daniel's patience was wearing thin. "That's quite an investment, sir," he said, the condescension slipping into his tone. "Perhaps I can show you something more accessible?" At that moment, a voice called out from across the store. "Jason! There you are, mate!" Daniel turned, his stomach twisting into a knot as the boutique's manager strode forward, his face lighting up with recognition. Jason Statham pushed back his hood, revealing the face that had graced 100 action movies. A face known worldwide. The color drained from Daniel's face. Jason grinned. "Yeah, I was just about to see if I should spend my money here or somewhere else." The manager's eyes flicked between Jason and Daniel, instantly realizing what had happened. Daniel swallowed hard. He had tried to brush off Jason Statham, one of the most recognizable actors in the world, because he had judged him by his clothes. And now, it was too late to take it back. The silence that followed was thick, the weight of realization sinking in. Daniel's mind raced, his face burning with embarrassment. How had he not recognized Jason Statham? The store manager, a well-dressed man named Richard, chuckled awkwardly as he stepped between them. "Mr. Statham, of course. My apologies if there was any misunderstanding." His gaze flicked to Daniel, his expression tight. Jason, still wearing that knowing smirk, crossed his arms. "No worries, mate. Just funny how quick people are to judge, isn't it?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a quiet challenge. Richard shot Daniel a sharp glance, silently urging him to fix his mistake. Daniel swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Of course, sir. I apologize for any confusion. I didn't recognize you." Jason arched an eyebrow. "And if I wasn't Jason Statham?" Daniel hesitated. "If I was just some bloke in a hoodie, you'd still be showing me the door, yeah?" Jason continued, his tone casual but cutting. Richard cleared his throat. "That's not how we treat our customers, I assure you." Jason let out a low chuckle. "You sure? Because it felt pretty clear a minute ago." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He had been so sure of his instincts, so confident in his judgment. But now, standing in front of one of the most famous action stars in the world, he realized just how wrong he had been. "Again, I apologize, Mr. Statham," Daniel said quickly. "I shouldn't have assumed." Jason held up a hand. "Look, mate, I'm not looking for an apology. I just think it's worth remembering that not everyone who walks in here is gonna fit your idea of rich or worthy. You never know who's standing in front of you." Daniel nodded, his throat dry. Jason turned to the glass case and tapped the display. "I'll take the watch." Richard, eager to smooth things over, clapped his hands together. "Excellent choice, sir. Allow me to personally—" "Nah," Jason cut in smoothly. "I want him to handle it." Daniel blinked. "Me?" Jason nodded. "Yeah. Let's see if you can sell to someone like me." Daniel knew this was a test, a lesson wrapped in an opportunity. And he had no choice but to step up. As he unlocked the case and carefully retrieved the watch, he silently vowed that this was a mistake he wouldn't make again. Daniel's fingers trembled slightly as he unlocked the glass case, carefully lifting the watch that Jason Statham had chosen. It was a sleek, limited edition piece with a polished titanium finish, one of the most expensive models in the store. Just an hour ago, he would have assumed that a guy in a hoodie couldn't afford something like this. Now, he was being forced to face the full weight of his mistake. Jason leaned casually against the counter, watching with an amused glint in his eye. "So," he said, "sell it to me." Daniel cleared his throat. "Of course, sir." He straightened his posture, forcing himself into the professional demeanor he had perfected during training. "This is the Titanium Chronomaster X, featuring Swiss automatic movement with a sapphire crystal face. It's known for its durability and precision." Jason held up a hand. "Nah, mate. Don't give me the sales pitch you memorized from a brochure." His voice was cool, unimpressed. "Tell me why I should buy this watch." Daniel hesitated. He had spent months studying product details and luxury branding, but Jason wasn't looking for polished facts. He wanted something real. Daniel swallowed, shifting his approach. "Well, it's a watch that speaks without trying too hard. Some luxury watches scream for attention, but this one, it's understated. Strong, but not flashy." Jason tilted his head slightly. "Go on." Encouraged, Daniel continued. "It's the kind of watch for someone who doesn't need to prove anything. They know their worth, and they don't have to announce it." Jason's lips curled into the faintest smile. "That's so?" Daniel nodded. "You don't wear a watch like this to show off. You wear it because you appreciate what it stands for: precision, resilience, and control." For the first time since the conversation started, Jason looked genuinely interested. He reached out, taking the watch from Daniel's hands, feeling its weight. "Huh," Jason murmured, turning it over in his palm. "Now that was a proper answer." Daniel exhaled, relieved that he had passed Jason's test, at least for now. The manager, Richard, clapped his hands together. "Excellent choice, Mr. Statham. Would you like that gift wrapped or—" "Nah," Jason said, shaking his head. "I'll wear it out." Richard beamed. "Very good, sir. And how would you like to pay?" Jason smirked as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a black credit card, the kind that didn't have a spending limit. He tapped it against the counter. "Full price. No discount." Daniel's stomach twisted. He knew Jason could easily afford the watch, but the words carried an unspoken message. "This is what you assumed I couldn't do." The payment went through in seconds. As Daniel carefully handed Jason the receipt, he hesitated, then said, "I really am sorry for how I acted before." Jason took the receipt and tucked it into his jacket pocket. "Lesson learned?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah." Jason studied him for a moment, then clapped him on the shoulder. "Good. Then I won't have to give you a kicking." The joke caught Daniel off guard, and despite himself, he laughed. The tension that had been so thick minutes ago finally broke. Jason adjusted the new watch on his wrist, admiring it for a second. "Nice pick," he said, flashing Daniel a grin. "I might just start trusting your opinion after all." And with that, Jason turned and strode out of the boutique, leaving behind a humbled sales associate and a lesson that wouldn't be forgotten anytime soon. As Jason Statham walked out of the boutique, the air inside felt noticeably lighter. But for Daniel, the weight of what had just happened still pressed down on him. He exhaled slowly, leaning against the counter as the reality of his mistake settled in. The manager, Richard, turned to him, his voice low but firm. "Let that be a lesson, Daniel. You nearly cost this store a high-profile customer, and more importantly, you embarrass yourself." Daniel winced but nodded. He had been arrogant, too quick to judge. The worst part? If Jason Statham hadn't been famous, Daniel probably wouldn't have learned this lesson at all. "I get it," Daniel said. "I was wrong." Richard studied him for a moment before sighing. "We all make mistakes. Just don't make this one again." Daniel nodded, but before he could say anything else, an older gentleman stepped up to the counter. He was dressed simply, dark jeans, a well-worn sweater, and an old leather watch on his wrist. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice polite but firm. "I was looking at that collection of cufflinks over there." He pointed to the far end of the store. "Would you mind showing them to me?" Daniel felt a momentary flash of instinct, the same one that had led him to dismiss Jason Statham just minutes earlier. The older man didn't look like a typical luxury customer. His clothes weren't designer, and he carried himself without the usual arrogance of high spenders. But this time, Daniel caught himself. With a genuine smile, he gestured toward the display. "Of course, sir. I'd be happy to." As Daniel walked over to assist the man, Richard watched approvingly, nodding to himself. The lesson had been learned. Outside, Jason Statham glanced at his new watch, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. He had no doubt that Daniel would think twice before judging someone by their appearance again. And that, Jason thought, was worth far more than the price of any watch. A week had passed since the incident at the luxury boutique, but for Daniel, the lesson Jason Statham had unintentionally taught him lingered. Every time he interacted with a customer, he reminded himself not to make assumptions based on their clothes, demeanor, or first impression. One evening, as the store was winding down for the day, the older gentleman from before, Mr. Harris, as Daniel had learned, returned. This time, he carried a small, elegant bag from another high-end boutique down the street. Daniel greeted him warmly. "Good to see you again, sir. How can I help you today?" Mr. Harris smiled. "Actually, I came back to say thank you." Daniel frowned slightly. "For what?" The older man chuckled. "The last time I was here, I saw you hesitate before showing me the cufflinks. I could tell you almost dismissed me, but then, you changed your approach. You treated me with respect, and because of that, I decided to shop here again." Daniel's face warmed. He had been that obvious? Mr. Harris continued. "I own several businesses, and over the years I've learned that the best employees aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who learn from them." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. "You own businesses?" Mr. Harris nodded. "I do. And one of them happens to be a luxury hotel chain." He set the bag he was carrying on the counter and slid a gold-edged business card toward Daniel. "We're always looking for people who understand the value of good customer service. If you're ever interested in a change, give me a call." Daniel stared at the card, stunned. He had almost dismissed this man, just like he had with Jason Statham. But because he had learned from that first mistake, he had earned a second chance, this time, one that might change his career entirely. "Well," Daniel breathed. "I don't know what to say." Mr. Harris smiled. "Just remember, real wealth isn't just in what you wear. It's in how you treat people." As the older man left the store, Daniel turned the business card over in his hands, a slow smile forming. Jason Statham had walked into the store as a stranger and walked out as a teacher. And because of that encounter, Daniel's future looked brighter than ever. Never judge a person by their appearance. You never know if the stranger in front of you is about to change your life.